Welcome to the European show. Thank you for coming. This is the first episode, so I appreciate you being here. You are the first. Congratulations. I'm Abby Bella. I'm in London, but I'll be speaking on and through the European lens on global issues from a transcontinental and transnational perspective. Join me here for the hottest tea and the coolest European analysis. There's a theory out there about why there's not that many exciting podcasts and shows that address European issues as a whole. Mainly it's the fact that it's so many different countries that are part of Europe. Some are part of the European Union, other not. They don't share necessarily a language, and these people tend to consume different media. So it's kind of hard to get all these people on board and interested in the same thing. But then again, these days, pretty much everyone speaks English, so there must be another reason. And the theory goes that there's no, like, super exciting, any side, left or right, show regarding Europe because Europe's just kind of boring. So there's no TYT Europe, basically, because all that the European Union does and all that really happens in the European Union and Europe, which is dominated by European Union politics, is like, you know, these unaccountable bureaucrats who are in charge of all these different administrative affairs kind of arguing over the size of cheese and, you know, who gets to call what cheese Gouda and stuff like that, which is half true and half not true, because there's actually a lot of drama happening behind the scenes, and a lot of drama that happens between politicians and in their own countries between each other, and that's what's happened recently with the visit to Turkey made by European Union chiefs. This was Ursula von der Leyen and Charles Michel. Ursula von der Leyen is president of the European Commission. Charles Michel is president of the European Council. And they took a trip to Turkey. This is happening this week. It was big news. And there was so much drama to this story. It's incredible. And it's not for the reason that you think. When I started covering this, I thought it would be drama because of Turkey and what's going on in Turkey. But it's actually not that. Like, the drama is not about Turkey. The drama is about the cattiness inside the current relations in the European Union and between Ursula and Charles, it would seem. I mean, it's all speculation, allegedly. None of this is proven. I don't have a source in the European Commission yet, but I'm pretty sure there's like something weird going on. Anyway, this is what happened. Ursula von der Leyen, president of the European Commission, and Charles Michel, president of the European Council, went to Turkey on a visit this week because, well, why? Because Erdogan's been a naughty boy again. This is what he does. He's always a naughty boy, so no one was surprised. They've been talking about this visit for a while. There's a lot of stuff that they went to discuss, and I'll get into that in the second half of this story. But first I want to talk about what happened, because it all got overshadowed by actual drama and hot tea that happened in Turkey on this visit between Turkey and the EU and Ursula von der Leyen and Charles Michel and Erdogan. And for a brief moment, Erdogan wasn't even a bad guy. Like, he wasn't the baddest. Well, I mean, it depends on your measurement of bad guy, but I'd say like for like a good 5 seconds or milliseconds, he was not the baddest guy in that room. Here's why. The European papers are calling it Sofagate. Sofagate. Chief European officials arrived in Turkey. They gave some speeches. Erdogan looked interested, but not too much. It was clear there was going to be one of those visits full of tension. And they had a meal. Then they went to negotiate and for a little sit down and a photo opportunity. And the Erdogan people had this chamber ready where these talks took place. And turned out that even though it was Ursula von der Leyen and Charles Michel together from the European Union, representing the European Union in these talks, Erdogan only had 2 seats available, and that was one for himself and one for the other person. And when they all three entered the room, Erdogan motioned Charles Michel into the other main seat and kind of left Ursula just kind of standing, wondering, hanging. It's iconic. The footage is amazing. You should watch it just for, like, if you're not even interested in European politics that much, you just watch it for the feminism. It's incredible. If this keeps happening, this show is going to be really interesting. But yeah, it was like this, like, momentous, like, oh my god, the tension. And she was just kind of standing there, and then she, like, sat on the sofa with, like, and there's, like, another administrative person, I think, on the other, like, side of the room, on the other divan or sofa, or whatever you want to call it. And, like, the look on her face. And Charles Michel, the worst thing about the situation is that, like, clearly there was manipulation from Erdogan's side. Like, Erdogan is the kind of guy that, like, they're literally, Ursula von der Leyen and Charles Michel were in Turkey because Erdogan is breaking all the treaties, all the commitments he's made to human rights, and specifically to women's rights. So they're there specifically to discuss the women's issues, right? And he didn't have a seat for the woman. On purpose. And he, on purpose, like, made it clear, like, he made sure that Charles Michel sat down. And Charles Michel, instead of showing, like, the tiniest bit of backbone or, you know, any kind of, like, you know, thinking apparatus, like, even in the lowest life forms, he like, didn't. He sat down, and, like, his face, like, the expression is blank, like, you know, only an amoeba or any invertebrate, like, it's an invertebrate face. Like, this is someone who is so spineless that their expression has now turned into a primitive organism. It was, like, it was horrific to behold. And what a horrible situation, and what a horrible way to treat. And this is supposed to be, you know, people in the top ranks of the European Union who are representing European citizens, allowing someone like Erdogan to treat a woman in this way, clearly on purpose, clearly making a statement. And Charles Michel, instead of diplomatically turning the situation around, just sat there like a total loser. Ursula, of course, didn't do anything. They didn't do anything. They didn't want to cause a scene, so it just, like, it happened. The meeting happened. She was, like, on the other side of the room. It was really uncomfortable, and then it stopped. And then, of course, the day after, Twitter was ablaze with criticism of Charles Michel, not Erdogan, because we know that Erdogan does this stuff, and he was very successful in doing it because he caused quite a stir, and Charles Michel kind of fell into his trap. Yeah, like, pretty much every newspaper, every publication, Twitter, everyone in their dog walker's mother is, like, on this now, because, and there's, like, a lot of criticism of Charles Michel. So he's getting the brunt of it, and he actually made a statement, and then he issued an apology about this, which was not a very good apology. He basically said that he was sorry, not sorry. There was nothing he could have done. He basically said, there's nothing else I could do. It was like, that's what happened. I didn't want to do anything because I didn't want to cause an incident. Because, you know, that's kind of the style of, like, most European Union diplomacy, is to kind of, like, you know, be, like, low-key, don't cause an incident, don't do anything. But, I mean, this is, like, two people, you know? Like, they came in there as a team, and he got completely played. This isn't even about, like, not causing an incident. This is about, like, showing some vestige of power and self-respect that he totally failed on. Totally failed. So that's what he said. He was like, I didn't want to cause an incident. And then he was like, well, I didn't know what else to do. And then finally he said in his, like, statement, not an apology, he said, well, you know what? Like, I just thought that, like, I didn't really think it would be too much of a deal for Ursula because Ursula is a feminist, and the way that I understand equal rights, I don't know if he used the word feminist, but he definitely said, like, women's equal rights. And he was like, the way that I interpret equality is that it shouldn't matter if the man or the woman sits or who goes in first. this is gold. This is so bad, by the way. I am appalled by this. I think Jean-Michel has like clearly, like, whatever idea they have in the European, like, whatever his advisors in the European Union think that his brand should be, and, like, how important it is for, like, people to actually think you're popular, like, he just lost his, like, he only started, like, a year ago. He's lost. Like, he's done. Like, this is incredibly bad. This is such bad press. European officials never get this kind of bad press. Juncker, who was the predecessor for Ursula von der Leyen, by the end of, like, his stint in the commission was, like, saying creepy things to interns and, like, appearing drunk and stuff, and, like, nobody really cared because it was, like, so low-key and kind of boring. But, like, this is the stuff that Twitter is made of. So, in a weird way, I'm hoping this is gonna, like, shine a little bit of more light on, like, the workings of the European Union and get more people involved, like, as citizens in Europe, in the governance of Europe, and in a possible federal future, because I think that's where we should be going. And right now, this idiot is functioning in his diplomatic role, unaccountable to anyone, because that's how the European Union works currently. The citizens of Europe don't choose him. Nobody votes for him. He's elected by other officials. And it's a kind of, you know, and that's one of the reasons why a lot of people kind of fear and don't understand the European Union, and why things like Brexit happened out of ignorance, and also a failure by the European Union to appeal to its citizens, which is, like, kind of like your first concern, really, as a governing body, but they fail. And yeah, so Jean-Michel, like, it turns out Jean-Michel is a total amoeba. The president of the European Council is a total, like, completely unable to stand up to anybody. And he also seems to have an incel interpretation. Like, he's basically an incel. He's outed himself as an incel, because only an incel would say, well, my interpretation of feminism is that if you punch me in the face, then I can punch you in the face too. Right? Like, oh, you want equal rights? Well, you pay for my dinner. Well, you want equal rights? Well, you carry this stuff. Because, like, whatever. Equal rights, Jean-Michel, just to, you know, just a quick lesson on equal rights and what women actually usually want. Usually, this is what feminism and equal rights is about. It's not about giving you, the cis male of privilege, the right to trample over a woman, take first place just by sheer speed or strength, or by the fact that there's another male of privilege with you, motioning you into the seat of privilege, and then say, oh, but it's equal rights, so you could have been quicker. Why weren't you quicker? You don't mind. Oh, you don't mind that I ate your cake and then had it too, because it's equal rights. I was just stronger than you. Equal rights is not some bizarre interpretation and misinterpretation of Darwinian psychology and the pseudoscience that it is. It's equal rights, and it's also being polite. When Donald Tusk, when he was president of the European Council, he had a really good partnership with Jean-Claude Juncker, who was president of the Commission, like Ursula von der Leyen is now. And if that had happened to them, would they have done this? Like, it doesn't even matter that she was a woman. What matters is that you're showing extreme lack of any kind of resolve or self-respect as a representative of Europe and the European Union when you go to see someone like Erdogan, who is a wannabe dictator. If it happened to Donald Tusk and Juncker, when they're both men, they're both white men of privilege, they would have made a bit of a fuss. I'm sure they would have, like, done something. It's not just because she's a woman. It's just because you're a spineless amoeba. Jean-Michel. That's what happened. Incredible. Anyway, so the president of the European Council was outed as an incel. And then, okay, and then there's more to this drama. There's, like, another layer. So then it turns out, this has been going on for, like, 3 solid days. Sofagate is what I look for. So then it turned out that there's speculation that Erdogan kind of used this, used the opportunity of interpreting protocol in a very strict way to make this situation happen, and that the reason why he was able to make the situation so uncomfortable for the EU officials is because there was a lot of miscommunication and power play between the entourage of Ursula von der Leyen and Charles Michel separately. And they in turn had issues with the EU people, the EU delegation on the ground already. So there were like 3 different parties working and then communicating with Erdogan and his people on how to organize this thing, and some of these things were missed. Erdogan didn't make any kind of a secret that he was going to have 2 chairs. So there's a lot of speculation at the moment, including in Politico, about what kinds of tensions might be going on there and why this happened in the first place. And one of the excuses, well, definitely a statement made by Erdogan's staff, I think, or at least the information that they've given out, was that the Erdogan people simply interpreted protocol extremely strictly, like obviously on purpose, but like in a way they were right to do this because the president of the European Council is slightly more senior than the president of the European Commission, and therefore it's like the equivalent of a visit by a president and a first or prime minister. So like, you know, in a parliamentary system. Nevertheless, it's good to remember though that that's not really true, because that's not like strictly how this works in the European Union. It is different. That's why they're both called president. So maybe there needs to be a different interpretation of protocol, or like a better approach to communication in future, so things like this don't happen, especially when then it comes out, like when it causes this kind of an incident, because this like is a big incident and people are calling it a gaffe. It's not a gaffe, it's an incident, because it just like shows the leaders of the European Union to be idiots, and also sexist idiots, who will at the drop of a hat just follow a sexist dictator to whatever destination he wants to lead them to. But anyway, so that's also, there were statements also by European Union, I think, statements by European Union officials or, you know, people close to the situation, confirming that, you know, actually Charles Michel is the more senior, so if there's 2 chairs, he should take the first chair, whatever. But I think there's tension between them. They should be having a meeting right now. They should be, they have these like regular meetings, Ursula and Charles, but they skipped one. So I think there's definite drama, 100% drama. Incredible. It reminds me of that time, maybe some of you remember, when Angela Merkel went to see Putin a few years back, and Putin Angela Merkel is scared of dogs. She has a phobia of dogs, and Putin, the big macho Putin, went to meet her, to greet her with a bunch of massive dogs at his side, like Alsatian style dogs. And yeah, interesting. It's like the same tactic, you know, these like little wannabe dictators with their tiny wee-wees, trying to prove a point. And obviously, it was bad enough that Putin did this. Like Ursula, Angela ignored it, got on with the situation. That's what European Union officials do. That's their style. What doesn't help is having a man at your side as a woman who then undermines you and makes everything harder for you. And it inadvertently makes the situation look like he sided with the guy who was out to get you. Incredible. Anyway, but it does show how much they're scared of us, women, and how little they have to offer in terms of attack. This is the best he could do. Like this, a mean girl situation. You can't sit with us. Like that is what Erdogan has. Okay, but why were these people in Turkey in the first place? Well, let me tell you, there's been a lot of drama always. Turkey's been full of drama. Erdogan is a very, very bad man and a very naughty boy. and he's always doing naughty things, and the European Union's always like, don't be a naughty boy, and then he does it anyway, and then they kiss and make up, and it's like this whole thing. There's a reason why Turkey is not a part of the European Union. It's Erdogan. It's Erdogan. Turkey should have become a member of the European Union like back in the 2000s by rights, but it never did because of its issues internally with human rights, with the way that things are run, and with the kinds of commitments it's able to do in terms of the European Union and the way that it sees, again, human rights issues, basically. Erdogan recently announced, this was in late March, that he has decided that he will be leaving the Istanbul Convention, ironically enough, yep, which was signed in Istanbul in 2001, and he's not interested in being part of it anymore. He's bored with it. He's done, because this convention was signed by mainly European but also world countries, including Turkey, including the United States, including Canada. It's a commitment from each of those countries and states to uphold the necessity for protecting women's rights and looking at the issue of women's rights, domestic violence, and violence against women and children as issues that really do pertain fundamentally to human rights. Because very often there's just not enough legislation and not enough protection for women who are victims of violence, when that violence is mainly because they're women, but we don't see it as human rights violations, and there's just not enough legislation around the world. This is a global issue. And that's what that convention was for. Not all the countries ratified it. Turkey was one of the countries that did actually ratify it, as far as I know. And yeah, and now 10 years later, this was signed in 2011. 10 years later, he's like, no, you know what? I don't want it anymore, because I've decided that things like this go against traditional values. And Turkey is all about traditional values, so we're going to quit. And he made this announcement, and there was a big, big backlash in Turkish society. And the women are pissed, obviously, and feminists are pissed. Everyone's pissed, because that's not how it should be, and he shouldn't be making this decision by himself. But as we know, Erdogan is a wannabe dictator. There is not that much freedom of speech in Turkey right now, so we don't really know the scale and the extent of the outrage, because we just can't read about it, because a lot of journalism is controlled by Erdogan. So that's happened. So that was a no-no. And another thing that he's been kind of doing recently, which is kind of, it's at the same time pathetic and even funny, but on the other hand, it's chillingly dangerous. Erdogan has a lot of freedom of speech infractions in his little record book of things he's done that made people uneasy. But his latest one is what is colloquially known as the Internet Law. The Internet Law in Turkey is coming into force as we speak, and it's something he's been working on for the past year or two. What happened is that someone tweeted a joke about his son or his daughter in Turkey on Twitter, and he didn't like it. He didn't think it was funny, and he decided that there has to be a law against this kind of thing, against all this free speech and making jokes about his children. So he decided that from now on in Turkey, if you are a social media platform with over 1 million users, you have to have a representative who will by law liaise and be required to speak to and report to the Turkish government, i.e. Erdogan, and ensure that the laws of the country are in place, including this internet law, which means if there's something they don't like, if there's something they don't want to see on the internet, they're going to tell you, you know, like Facebook, Twitter, whoever, take down this thing, take down this account, these are not the keywords we're doing in Turkey anymore, things like that. Facebook already said yes. Of course. Twitter kind of held out for a long time. If there's anything good about Twitter, it is that they tend to hold out on things like this. They tend to be a little bit more unapologetic in their own creepy, postmodern, apocalyptic, technical way. But just last week, they kind of gave in, and they're now sending someone out. They're going to appoint someone. It's going to happen. Every one of these media giants, Facebook, Twitter, they're all going to have an appointed person who's going to liaise with the Turkish government and make sure that nothing naughty is said that Erdogan might not like. Obviously, there's many issues with this. I think my biggest one, though, is that it's so easy for someone like Erdogan to hold these sources of communication that we have today that have become dominant in our culture, like globally. We are all dependent on things like Twitter to exist, to get our information. It's a monopoly, and we can't get out of that. Like it's dominating the market. There's no alternative to that. Not realistically. You could try like a less known platform, but it's like it's not an alternative, because you're not going to be part of the global conversation if you don't participate in this. And the people who are in charge of these global means of communication that inform and shape what is being said are single-handedly negotiating with someone like Erdogan. Like, this is who's in charge of us now, globally, as global citizens. These people are in charge of you and me, to the extent that Facebook is talking to someone like Erdogan, old school dictator Erdogan, old school authoritarian, and new school authoritarian and dictator Zuckerberg. And they're having nice conversations. They seem to be able to work together pretty well. And I understand, I don't want to be like unfair and too harsh. I understand that, you know, there's people in Twitter, people who are part of Facebook. They understand themselves that they're doing this so that they can continue to provide the service to people in Turkey. They don't want to deprive them of this means of communication, so they have to make some concessions, even though it does hurt in the long term, directly or indirectly, and silence the citizens of Turkey. That it's some kind of a compromise, that there's a greater good being served here. But at the same time, I think my argument is it shouldn't be up to them anyway. It shouldn't be up to Zuckerberg. And if something is so big and so predominant in global culture, this is not like a fad. This is not like one, you know, things like Facebook, like he rules the world, and he's so powerful, and the platform is so powerful that it's able to negotiate completely outside of any other protocol or political body or force or political regulation. He's able to just single-handedly negotiate with someone like Erdogan, and I'm very uneasy about that. I think that is a glimpse into our future, and that should not be our future. We need to. I mean, Erdogan is Erdogan. He's going to do stuff like that. That's what he does, right? But, you know, people like Facebook need to, when stuff like this happens, they need to... It's not even when stuff like this happens. No. They just need to step back in general. And governments globally need to find ways of speaking about these types of monopolies in a way that's going to help us to dismantle them. If one man is in charge of the way that communication is engaged in and made and created in the entire world between people on a political scale, that's the death of thinking. That's the death of our future intellectual progeny, like, you know, and also the death of freedom. It really shouldn't be, these guys shouldn't be so powerful, basically. I don't know what the solution is in terms of like practically step by step how to tackle this. And definitely the situation with the Amazon vote and the way that that was manipulated and how these workers were intimidated, basically, that is painting a really scary picture of the future. And I believe that there is strength in numbers, and I believe there is strength in communication, and there is strength in protests, and there's strength in unions around the world, literally proletarians of the world uniting. And we have to do something about this, because these people are deciding our fate. And I've also heard people say, oh, actually, I read an article recently where someone was saying, well, this thing with Erdogan, doesn't that show you that, like, a regulation of corporations is bad? It's always bad. No, like, it shows me that regulation of corporations like Facebook is really necessary, because if you don't do that, then they become people like Erdogan. And then old school meets new school and, like, turns into some other new type of dictatorship that I dread to think about. But there's, like, some people saying, like, oh, well, like, if you want to regulate Facebook, like, you're basically Erdogan. Like, this ridiculous binary argument that's, like, people are always making these arguments in favor of these horrific, ginormous corporations. And it's not like, you know, it's not like conservative opinion makers or even right of center or center opinion makers are like that invested in these corporations. It always makes me wonder why so many people want to go against their own best interests and side with the very thing that's oppressing them. I don't know. Moving on to other wannabe dictators, let's talk about Boris Johnson and his failed Brexit everything. And all the consequences that the people of the United Kingdom are feeling today. One major event that's been happening over the last week, and there were things going on today on the streets of Northern Ireland. This is a big issue and a big, very, very big, serious problem. Since Good Friday and the Easter weekend, we've had unrest and people fighting on the streets of Northern Ireland, including Dublin, in loyalist areas. By loyalist, I mean people loyal to the United Kingdom, people who didn't want to be a part of Ireland proper, they want to be a part of the United Kingdom. This is the Northern Ireland situation. The Northern Ireland experience what is known today as the Troubles. The Troubles went on, the arbitrary date is 1968 to 1998. The 20th century was basically the century of a lot of unrest for Northern Ireland. I'm sorry if I'm preaching to the converted, if you're from the UK, or if you're someone of my generation who grew up with this, like on the news, all you heard about was IRA all the time. I remember this. But for those who are not boomers or who don't know what's going on in Ireland, wherever you are, to make it like a sweeping generalization about this conflict, for a long time in Ireland, people were divided through their culture and religion about whether they should be part of Ireland proper or the United Kingdom. The United Kingdom has a long history of imperialism, as we all know, and its neighbors were not immune to this. Ireland, as well as some other countries, kind of got swallowed by the UK a long time ago. And the people who live in Northern Ireland are kind of divided through their religion. There's the Protestants and the Catholics. The Protestants are usually the loyalists. They're culturally close to the United Kingdom. And the Catholics want to be part of Catholic Ireland. That was the conflict and the Troubles. The IRA was probably the most famous organization of that era that operated in Northern Ireland, but also in the rest of the United Kingdom. Much feared and very serious about their independence from the United Kingdom. So they were not loyalists. They wanted to be part of Ireland. The IRA is connected to the Sinn Féin party in Northern Ireland, and in 1998, after all these troubles and all these terrorist attacks made by the IRA, many people died in this conflict. It was, you know, like literally, you know, brother against brother. This is people living in the same city who basically share the same culture, apart from like small details, throwing bombs at each other, fighting with each other, dying for this cause for decades, for generations, entire families, clans. These troubles came to an end with the Good Friday Agreement, where finally, after all these decades, people put down their arms. Northern Ireland remained a part of the United Kingdom, but there were many conditions to that, and many commitments were made to ensure that there was a kind of soft border policy going on between Ireland and Northern Ireland, and all kinds of things were put in place to make sure that the people of Ireland felt comfortable, and that the two factions, the loyalists and those who support independence, that they could kind of, you know, just rebuild Ireland and get along again. And since Good Friday this year, anniversary of the Good Friday Agreement, there's been people back on the streets throwing gas bombs at each other, hijacking vehicles, including a bus. There's like this iconic image of a bus that got hijacked, set on fire. It's pretty bad, and it has not been this bad in Northern Ireland since the Good Friday Agreement. Why is it so bad? What happened? Well, what happened was the incompetence of the current British government, the Conservative Tory government, who failed to negotiate anything in their Brexit deal and failed their people miserably on every level, on every count. And one of their failures was an inability to understand the consequences in Northern Ireland of Brexit, a hard Brexit, a Brexit that had no deal reached to speak of, a Brexit that didn't give people any kind of reassurance in the United Kingdom. Obviously, Ireland proper is still a part of the European Union because it's not a part of the United Kingdom. But Northern Ireland is still a part of the United Kingdom. So in this extremely volatile, extremely sensitive, like this is living history. These are people who remember this, like not just the parents, like these are the people who remember this now. They were there for the Good Friday Agreement. There's a de facto border in Northern Ireland. It's called the Northern Ireland Protocol. But it's a border, and whether you like want to say it's a soft border or not a soft border, people can tell, people can see, the people of Northern Ireland, they're not stupid. They can tell that it is a border, and that's not what they asked for, and they're not happy about it. And what's interesting is that there's people in Northern Ireland right now, the ones who seem to be going out on the streets and doing all this stuff. It's unconfirmed, but what we know is that it seems to be groups of sometimes extremely young people, like 12 years old, in loyalist areas. So these are the people who are pro-UK, who wanted to be a part, you know, they want to be a part of the UK, and they want to follow the UK, and they thought that like the government of the United Kingdom would take care of them because they're loyalists and would not let this situation happen. But they did let it happen, and now the people are very, very, very upset. In terms of like the actual people who are behind it, although it is like scattered groups here and there, a lot of them seem to be young people. It is very clear that this is something that used to happen in Northern Ireland as well. This is like tradition. We're going back to these traditional terrorist ways, you know, like it seems that there's bigger powers that be behind this, what's going on there at the moment. And it's just a very toxic, very, very bad situation. Very, very bad. And when Brexit happened, there was like a letter was sent to the United Kingdom Prime Minister officially going back on the Good Friday Agreement by a loyalist faction. So again, these people are pro-UK, but they kind of wanted to make the point that like they're done with the Good Friday Agreement. if that's how it's going to be, and if that's how this present government is going to negotiate the Brexit that they caused, that is against the better interests of their own people. It's so tragic. And for a long time, I thought, you know, when not a lot was happening in Northern Ireland, I thought, well, maybe it's just, you know, maybe that thing has been, like, put to rest. These things come in cycles and generations. A lot of people today won't remember it, you know, like, it seems fresh, but, like, you know, the people who were active in the 90s and the 80s, they're not, you know, they're kind of, like, approaching retirement age. Like, you know, the new generation, at least Gen Z will not be, like, no, but it is Gen Z. Everyone's back on the streets. It's the same thing. It's because these types of histories, they have a long life. And unless you really put things to rest, and unless you make sure that you take care of your people, things like this will fester, and they will come out in the most horrible, horrible kinds of ways. They just underestimated the situation as usual. Although I actually don't think that they underestimated it. I don't think that Boris Johnson, like, thought that it was going to be okay in Ireland. I think he doesn't care. I think he doesn't care about the people of Northern Ireland, and he doesn't care about anyone. He doesn't care about you if you're in the UK. He only cares about himself and whatever insider dealing that he's doing. He's a Tory. He's a Thatcherite Tory. He's all about the business, all about himself. He doesn't care if people get killed. So far, from what I can tell, 70 cops have been injured in the unrest in Northern Ireland. That's a lot of cops, you know? Like, whatever those injuries mean, but that's a lot of unrest. That's a lot of explosives. That's a lot of going back to that memory of the Troubles. It's just so irresponsible. It's evil and cruel and irresponsible, and it goes against the memory of the people who died in the Troubles. This is a very serious thing here, and it's a very serious thing for people in Northern Ireland, obviously. My heart goes out to the people of Northern Ireland. There's a special place in my heart for them. This government is just so evil. They really just don't care. They don't care, and they're not going to do anything, and they're not going to help you. They're just going to let this happen because they know that they're not going to be in power forever, and it's not going to be their problem. And we'll have another period of 40, 50, 60, 100 years, I don't know, of people killing each other in Ulster. Incredible. Next on the agenda is the death of Prince Philip. That's a big deal here in the United Kingdom. The country is in a state of national and official mourning. This is like the highest level death in the royal family since Diana, and it's kind of polarizing people a lot because obviously there's like a lot of people in the United Kingdom, although that's not something that people want to hear about because it's not cute, but there's a lot of people who are actual Republicans here, in the sense that they're against the monarchy, and they don't want the royal family to be the figurehead of the government, and they don't think it's cute, and they don't like it at all. And there's also people who love the monarchy, and they feel like it's part of who they are, and it's part of their national identity, and they couldn't live without the Queen, etc., etc., etc. So there's these two types of people. I think it's clear that I'm not a monarchist, and I don't think the monarchy is cute. I think there's a lot of problems with it, and I'm going to go over some of those now. But I just want to address the Prince Philip situation. And in an unlikely move, I would like to actually defend him a little bit. Just a little bit. In terms of the things that people are saying about him on Twitter, and just like in general people are saying about him. There's some of the things that people are saying about Prince Philip that are simply incorrect. And it kind of deflects from the overall critique of the man and the institution, because I don't think it's like, I don't think it's that significant what kind of a person he was. What's significant is what these people represent in the royal family. It's kind of, you know, all these things are beyond them. They're just figureheads in a system of meaning and symbolism that is really, really part of the British fantasy, and that Britain sells to the world, and is profoundly wrong, because these people are billionaires. They're extremely rich, and they didn't get rich by working. They got rich because they're descended from monarchs and oppressors of the people. This money belongs to the people, and that's where it should go, not to Prince Philip or Prince Harry or whoever. It's not their money. That's number one. Number two, Prince Philip was 99 years old when he died, and he was famous in the United Kingdom, known to everyone. The thing that he was famous for was that he was that embarrassing grandfather / uncle, whatever. He was the racist uncle. And he knew he was racist, and was kind of performatively racist on purpose, like in a jokey kind of dad, like silent generation dad way, I guess. King of the boomers kind of way. Like, he was just extremely offensive to pretty much anyone he ever met. Like, he was offensive about everyone, and he was not like the kind of person that you want to take with you to a party, because you know he's going to say something really horrible. And some of his choice quotations include, "You managed not to get eaten," when he was suggesting to a student in 1998 who had been trekking in Papua New Guinea that tribes there were still cannibals. He also, in 2002, said to a successful Aborigine entrepreneur, "Do you still throw spears at each other?" Stuff like that. A lot of people think that when Philip was saying things like that, that he kind of like meant it, like he truly believed that. That's not really the case, at least in my opinion. I'm not an expert on the royal family. I don't care. But I don't think he was. Like, let's give this man some credit. Like, he was on purpose being disobedient and kind of like a naughty boy in relation to, I don't know, maybe like it was like some like subconscious thing that he wanted to like show the queen that, you know, even though he's the house husband, he can still be naughty sometimes. He was just one of those people. You know exactly who I'm talking about. And that doesn't excuse the behavior, but I don't think that he truly wondered if people were throwing spears at each other. I think he like clearly thought that he was being like subversive and funny. Clearly not funny to everyone. And every time he said something like this, the press would like go into a frenzy over it. So I think he also did it for the attention and just to play with people, whatever it was. And just to be fair to Prince Philip, he did play both sides. He said a lot of offensive things about Madonna's singing, just like petty things about like insignificant things. He insulted women, pretty much everyone. Okay, so here's a good one. This is like him speaking to Obama in 2010. And he said, after hearing Obama had breakfast with leaders of the UK, China, and Russia, Prince Philip said, "How can you tell the difference between them?" That's funny. That's funny. He told a child that he was too fat. It's just like on and on and on. You get the gist. Do I excuse this kind of behavior? No. He knew what he was doing. He did it on purpose. This is someone, you can say that he's like old school, born in like the 1920s of the 20th century. But still, he was able to change with the times. He is the thing that he's really famous for in the royal family is being the innovator, the guy who kept the royal family kind of abreast of technological and social change. So like he knew what was going on in the world. He knew what was appropriate and what was not appropriate. And he just decided that part of his legacy was going to be the racist uncle at dinner. And that's how he's being remembered. But I think, at the same time, I think a lot of the kind of things that people are saying about him are a little, I think we're being too mean. This is not about celebrating someone's death. This is about remembering someone for who they were. He was a very offensive fellow. he was just an offensive person. I'm not here to like praise, like there's like people, you know, it's like all over, like everywhere is like talking about Prince Philip now in the UK, and they're like, oh, he headed 800 charities and he did this for the children. Yeah, come on, like he has so much money, like he's got to put it somewhere. I'm sure he gets like a tax refund from it. Like he can afford to, like what else is he gonna do? That they're supposed to be doing this, that's his job. Like it's ridiculous, like these people saying, and he is such a philanthropist. He had no choice in the matter. Like what else was he gonna do? I don't think he like achieved any greatness. He literally did nothing other than run the royal family, which is completely surplus to requirements anyway and needs to be reformed immediately as far as I'm concerned. But at the same time, I'm not comfortable with some of the things that I'm seeing and that I was seeing in the past too, of like people like putting up pictures of him when he was like closer to his passing, or pictures from the past 2 years where he didn't look very good. He looked kind of ill. People saying, you know, calling him a vegetable, or saying like that he's already died and he's just like decomposing, things like that. That's like, that's not cool. Like, critique his words and critique his attitude, and I'm like, as I said, like I am not like a royal family fan. Critique like what he stands for and critique the institution. Don't critique a man who lived through World War II on his appearance in 2021 when he's 99. That's like, I'm not cool with that. It makes me really uncomfortable. It's not okay. Critique his actions. Don't critique his age or the way he looks. I wouldn't want someone to say that about me. I wouldn't want someone to say that about someone I know, and no matter what they did. Anyway, it's not classy. I don't like it. I just wanted to say that. I'm not one of those people here. You know, I'm not trying to get into this like Prince Philip and anti-Prince Philip debate. However, there is one thing I want to say in terms of Prince Philip and what people, another thing that's like really kind of one thing that people keep saying about him, which is incorrect, misleading, and makes us sound dumb. And trust me, I used to be one of those people because I wanted to make that generalization because it's lazy, but it's like on point and it looks good and whatever. And this generalization is that Prince Philip was a Nazi. He was not a Nazi. Here's how this works. And this is like a very European thing. And it's like, I get why people are confused, but let me just like explain. Prince Philip came from a broken family. He in theory was a prince in Greece, but his family had been driven out of Greece in fear for their life, so they had to flee to France, and that's where he lived with his father. But he also traveled a lot because his mother had been institutionalized with mental health issues. There was a whole other tragedy, and he kind of got like fobbed off on like different people in the family. This is like the 1930s, okay? He was a young child, and two of his sisters married into German aristocratic families. They're aristocrats. They're all inbreeding. They need to marry someone who's aristocratic. Two of his sisters married German people, and these German people, whether they wanted to or not, as the aristocracy, they were kind of implicated in the regime of the time, which is Nazis. I don't know to what extent like his sisters loved Nazis or didn't love Nazis. It doesn't really matter because that's kind of not the point. But there's this picture of Prince Philip attending a funeral when he's young, which I believe is the funeral of his sister, but I need to fact check this. Again, it doesn't matter whose funeral it is. His sister died tragically in a plane crash in the 30s. This is Nazi Germany, and these are aristocrats, so it's like a big deal. And all these Nazis organized a funeral for this person, and I believe Goering was even there. Like, you know, all these like top officials were there to pay tribute to their aristocracy because they're Nazis. And Prince Philip is there marching with these Nazis because he's there for a family member's funeral. I don't know what his beliefs were at the time. We'll probably never know. It's just, it's a part of history. There's this is the thing about Europe. We're also close to this. There's only like so many degrees of generational separation from the reality that in the 1930s, if you went to Germany, you would be pictured with a German making a Nazi salute, like whatever it was, right? So I think it's unfair to call him a Nazi just because he was pictured and just because his sisters were in these German aristocratic families. Whatever, his sister could have been like numero uno for Hitler. I don't care. Like, that has no bearing on him. And this was an unconventional family situation at the time. He didn't live with his sisters. His sisters were much older than him, so he was kind of left alone when they moved out to marry. And Prince Philip was eventually raised by a British aristocrat, Lord Mountbatten, and sent to a school in Scotland, and he was socialized as a fully British citizen because that was part of his heritage. And when he grew up, he went and fought in World War II too. So he fought against the Nazis. He fought the Nazis. He didn't like Nazis, and he is one of many, many people at the time who made that contribution to European society. So on this point, I just wanted to make this clear because it's bothering me. And I used to say that because, like, you know, I used to make this generalization because I thought it was like cool to make it, whatever. But it's actually not cool because there's like a legacy. World War II legacy in Europe is super... It's not what it feels like in other places. Like, it's very real. It's in proximity to people. It's not just a living memory because it is for many people, but it's like there, like on the streets, like it's in the cobbled stones, you know? And this is not a joke. Yeah, like he did all the comedy racism, whatever. But the truth is that when it came to it, he was on the right side of history. And how many people today can say that they definitely would be too? That they would go and fight and risk their life for a cause? I don't know. Like, you know, this is like a matter of conscience for all of us. But when things got bad, we know for a fact that Prince Philip did fight the Nazis. And a lot of people in Europe did. And a lot of the racist grandmas and grandpas and uncles in Europe today are still racist in ways that are backwards, that they don't understand why they're racist, saying the things that Philip was saying. But it's the kind of racism that was okay back then. And I don't want to end up like being the apologetic person for this, but like there is a measure of people in Europe that is missing in some other countries where like this person will fight for your right to be free. Will fight for your right not to be killed by a Nazi. They might say like really offensive things about whatever, like spears and stuff. Or I'm sure Prince Philip would have said really offensive things to me because I'm an outsider. I'm Slavic. I'm oh my God. I can only imagine the things he would have said to me. But at the end of the day, I know that he would have fought for my right to be free if the Nazis like really did come to kill me and other people and put us in camps. Like, I don't want to get too much into it, but I think it's not a free pass. And I'm not saying, I don't want to be that person. I don't want to say like, oh, like it's your uncle, it's okay. I'm not saying that either. And Prince Philip, of all people, knew the difference, and he should have known better, and he shouldn't have said those things. And he said them on purpose because he wanted to like piss people off. Basically, that's how he wanted to be remembered. Because he had nothing better to do. But at the same time, let's call things what they are, and let's be specific about things, because there are people still alive today, like Prince Philip, who remember the war. It's a very important war in Europe. It really changed human relations around the world. It changed the way, definitely, that European critical theory looks at things, which in turn really has inspired a lot of the left movement, politically, culturally, in terms of organizing. The theory that comes out of Europe after 1945 is really the kind of theory that most lefties are working on today. So, and it came out of of that time, of that zeitgeist, because it was people writing about how horrified they are what happened and how it can never happen again. So let's just go easy on the World War II people. It doesn't mean they've earned the right to be racist, but I think, like, calling them a Nazi is insulting to the memory of the people who fought Nazis. And that doesn't make the royal family okay. They still need to be abolished. He was still, like, not a very useful member of society. And I think, like, to be fair to Philip, he felt that too. He was bothered by that. That's why he used to misbehave so much. He was a very offensive man. He should never have been wheeled out into public. And it should tell you something about the Queen. Like, if you're one of those people who are, like, watching The Crown and are like, oh, they're so cute, whatever. This woman was married to him for, like, 70 years and, like, still laughing at his jokes 70 years on. So she clearly thought he was funny. She clearly thought that what he was saying was acceptable. Does that not tell you something about the Queen? It's like people have this, like, lack of imagination in assessing the situation and the royal family. And there's been a lot of talk about whether the royal family is racist or not because of the Meghan Markle interview and stuff like that. Well, I mean, is the Pope Catholic? Is he? I'm not saying that necessarily, like, William harbors some, like, horrible racist views. I'm sure as an individual he doesn't. But, like, the whole institution is based and entrenched and within these discourses of racism, difference, domination, the wealth, everything. Like, the jewels in the Queen's crown. India asked for them back. Like, you know what I mean? But did they give them back? No. This is all pilfered from the countries that the United Kingdom Empire invaded and subjugated over the hundreds of years that it was doing this colonial business. So yeah, the Pope is still Catholic and the royal family institution is racist. Newsflash. And yeah, just to be clear, like, Prince Philip and the Queen were cousins. They had the same great-great-grandmother, Queen Victoria. Pretty much everyone who's a royal, like, within the realm of Europe is kind of related through Victoria. They were cousins. Oh, like, everything, like, that should be bothering people. The idea that, like, they're individually evil is just not true. Prince Philip was not evil. He was kind of horrible, but not that important. What's important is the institution. What it represents, how it functions, and how it constantly keeps on, like, it's like this, it's literal opium for the people. Like, oh, what dress did the Queen wear? Oh, we're British. We love the Queen. She's been oppressing you, not her personally, but what she represents. Oppresses and works against you. In conclusion, Prince Philip, not a Nazi. Stop saying it, please, because it's insulting to the victims and the people who fought in World War II and the people who were on the right side of history. Was he a terrible person? Yes, he was. Not a Nazi, though. Not the same thing. And that was the European show. That was the first episode. Thank you for joining me. I have one subscriber so far. It's myself. I also like my own tweets. The show's up on Tuesdays and Fridays at 9 p.m. BST. That's British Summer Time. So join me next Tuesday and stay safe out there.